sort it out. Good morning, members of the media, and we are pleased that you have come in your numbers. This is the first time that we have the tourism satellite account brought to the media. We usually deal with these matters through web releases, but we are so encouraged that you're all here. Let us look at what we deal with as Statistician and in South Africa. Statistician publishes tourism-related information in 4 reports. The first one is the Tourism and Migration, which looks at the number of international visitors to South Africa. And again, the Domestic Tourism Survey, which looks at the travel behavior of domestic visitors. And the Tourism Accommodation, which looks at the income earned from various types of accommodation. Let's look at the fourth one. The fourth one is the tourism satellite account, which covers the following areas: the economic activity, employment, and spending in the tourism sector. Now, we always get these questions. Who is a traveler? Who is a visitor? Most of us are travelers here because we have moved from point A to point B, from our homes to here. But a visitor is a traveler who takes a trip to the destination. Largely, this destination should not be their place of residence or their usual environment for less than a year, and for purposes of not going to take up employment at the place visited. And we can have a same-day visitor, someone who visits a place and for less than 1 day. And of course, for less than 1 night. But we also have a tourist. This is a visitor who travels and will include an overnight stay for at least a night. Now, let us look at tourism economic activity. How large is tourism in South Africa? We are talking about 2.9% of the GDP in 2016. That's about 125.1 billion rands. And let us look further. We need to compare this with other industries. Now, when we look at tourism, we can see sitting at 2.9. It's larger than agriculture, which is sitting at 2%, and of course smaller than mining. And we need to look further at the direct economic activity of tourism contribution to the GDP over time. We can see that in 2015, we can see that it has been going through contributing over from 2006, 2007. But let us look at 2015. You will remember that as South Africa, we introduced stringent measures in relation to the movement of children, that you need to have an unabridged birth certificate and at least as well consent from the parent not traveling, or both parents if the child is traveling with not both parents, in the form of a signed note that indicates that the parents have actually allowed the child to travel. And that actually had a shock in the way the numbers and the whole issue of measurement came. And our job is just to measure. We are not in the policy space. All we do is we listen to all policies and we still go back to measure. Now, let us look at employment in tourism. We are saying that 1 in 23 persons are employed or worked in the tourism sector in 2016. And of course, this is accounting for about 4.4% of the total workforce at the time in 2016. And we are talking of about 596 individuals. That is direct employment. And let us look further in terms of the contribution compared to other industries. We have already indicated that sitting at 4.4% contribution to the total workforce, we are actually less than mining, and of course, we are more than employees in mining and less than agriculture. Now look at the contribution. The contribution is sitting at 2.9% to the GDP. It's more than agriculture and less than mining. But here, of course, when we come to the contribution to the total workforce, we have more employees than mining, and of course less than agriculture. This correlation is not always like standard. It's what we measure. What we measure is what we bring to yourselves is what we measure. Now let us look at where are the tourism jobs concentrated, and we are talking about the 596 jobs in 2016. About 29%, almost 30% of those are sitting in the road transport, 21% in food and beverages, 19% in accommodation, retail accounted for, retail of tourism products accounted for 16%, and 4% is travel agencies, and again 10% was other. Let us look at employment by race group in the 6 largest tourism industries. And we are saying, and the blue color will be black African, the yellow one will be colored, and the green one will be Indian Asian, and the gray one will be white. And we can see that in all tourism jobs, about 77% was accounted for by black Africans, and with about 11% to coloreds, and about 4% to white, and to Indian Asian, and 9% to white. And of course, we can see such a consistency in the road passenger transport. The trends are almost the same. And of course, when we come to retail trade and in tourism, of tourism products, we can see that we drop to about 73% for black African, 12% for colored, and again about 6% to accounted for by the Indian Asians, and 9% for the white population group. And of course, at passenger transport, we are looking at about 60% for black African, 14% for coloreds, and 5% for Indian Asian, and about 21% for whites. Now, let us look at the number of individuals working in the tourism sector over time. We can see that the numbers coming from 2006, with a bump there in 2008, have been rising steadily. But again, that 2015 was that policy decision. We can see that there was a little drop there, and again, going to 2016, we can see that there is a steady rise. Now, let us look at spending in this area. We are saying that for every 100 rand spent in the tourism sector, 46% was spent by international visitors, and about 54% by domestic visitors. And for that, we are talking in 2016 of a total of about 265.8 billion rands. And if we were to look at that by international, for every 100 rand by international as well as by domestic, let us look at international first. We are saying that for every 100 rand spent, 12 rand would have gone to road transport and that's spent by international visitors. About 28 rand to non-specific products, and 15 rand to accommodation, 12 rand to air transport, 15 rand again to tourism-connected products, and all the way. But let us look at domestic, and this is quite interesting, as we would expect that most of our domestic visitors are traveling by road. We are having about 28 rand spent on road transport, and let us contrast that with air transport. It's about 14%. So while we still have more on the road, we still have a slightly higher by 2 rands to that of air transport versus air transport. And the point is, you can see that once people are in the country, even domestic international visitors, their interest is to go sightseeing than be spending a lot more time in the plane. They want to spend more time in the plane arriving here, but they want to go outside seeing. Let us look at what is the value of tourism expenditure. Firstly, inbound is 121.4 billion, and let us look outbound. That's about 78.5 billion, and the trade balance is about 42.9 billion. And going further, in the domestic expenditure, it's about 144.4 billion. And the total amount spent, as we have already indicated, is about 265.8 billion. Now, going further, the next slide confirms to us that we are thanking you, and certainly the next slide will be blank. But let me give you assurances that for the questions I've brought my colleagues here, who will take only the difficult questions, I'll take the easier ones. I thank you.
Thank you, SG. We'll now open the floor for questions. Start in Pretoria, then cross over to Cape Town. Any takers in Pretoria? You noted? Okay, you can go ahead, sir. You noted.
Good morning, SG and your team. My name is Neo Makikin from SABC Radio News. From the 12 minutes presentation that you have given us today, one could easily say tourism is like a new gold discovery. My question to you is that what is it that you are proposing to the government as a recommendation? Because this tourism package has got the potential of creating almost half of the jobs that we are promised by the policymakers, including the presidency. What is it that you are sort of like in a package form, in a recommendation form, are you presenting to government that they must put more money into this industry? Thank you.
Okay, we'll take the next question if there's any. Okay, while the SG is still thinking of the response, we'll cross over to Cape Town. Are there any questions?
Oh, we have no questions for the short.
Back to the panel.
Neo, I thought we are the only ones who deal with measurement. Now I've been surprised that the SABC has ventured into measurement. Now we have presented over 12 minutes. Thank you again. But let us deal with what is it that we are proposing. Statisticians in official practice have to avoid by all means coming with policy prescripts once we have released our numbers to say this is what policymakers or captains of industry should follow as policy positions or implementation measures. There is a risk. And why shouldn't we venture into that space? The point is, once we start venturing into that space and providing guidance as to what should be done, and it so happens that in future our guidance doesn't confirm, and which could happen because there are a lot of things happening in the economy and in the society, and our guidance is not confirmed by our measurement in future. What is going to happen is that we're going to shy away from releasing those numbers because they don't confirm what we have raised or advised or predicted. And the moment we shy away from releasing the numbers, it means that we have lost our independence. So to always maintain and uphold our independence, we have to provide the numbers as freely as possible and make sure that these numbers are presented to the society as well as to those that are in leadership in the form of those of politicians and those that are in the leadership of businesses in such a manner that they can engage with one another on the products that we give as TSA. Having said that, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't make our products available to policymakers as well as to leadership, including captains of industry, and engage them in digesting them further. And once they've digested them, then what they do with them is certainly within their remit. Our remit would end at just providing the numbers to them. Thank you very much.
Now, my question is a follow-up. What could be the reason
GDP.
Gross value add.
More than agriculture and less than mine. What could be the reason for that kind of a movement?
Joe. Yeah.
Thank you for the question. I don't think you should see it as a competition between those three industries. Each one of the three would have their own reasons for why they would have a high growth rate in a year or maybe a contraction in a different one. In the case of tourism, we know that the 2016 number is significantly higher than 2015, partly because the 2015 number was during the period that we had the discussions around changing the visa regulations. So 2016 comes from a bit of a lower base, which gives us a high estimate for the contribution of tourism. Whereas in the case of agriculture, it's very much driven by the weather conditions. In 2014, 15, 16 even, we had severe drought, which had a negative impact on agriculture. So in 2017, the showing of agriculture was very positive. Mining has its own set of challenges, whether it is policy framework related, driven by market forces for the prices of commodities. It is just by way of illustration that we chose to compare the tourism sector with the agriculture and the mining industries to give a bit of perspective. If we purely stated that the contribution of tourism was now 2.9% of the economy, it might not have meant anything. But if you know it is for this particular year larger than what agriculture did, but maybe on par with electricity, gas and water, it just provides some context to the numbers. It wasn't a direct comparison to those two industries per se. Thank you.
Last question is Andy. Andy, before we close, are there any questions in your side?
Still no questions.
In the absence of questions, I would also like to extend the invitation to members of the media that are presently tomorrow, SABC. We will be releasing the mortality and costs of death at our offices, and we've already extended the invite. The briefing is starting at 11:30, and on behalf of SABC and Mr. Risenga Maluleke, I thank you for attending my meeting.
Thank you. Thank you. You might want to do a soundbite.
I'll have it around. But one of the things